Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to my weekly Meet the Artist series. My name is Tommy Hensel, and I am the director of the Fine and Performing Arts Center at Moraine Valley Community College, located in Palos Hills, Illinois. Moraine Valley and Palos Hills are in the southwest suburbs of Chicago, so we're relatively close to the city, 20, 25 minutes from the downtown area. So we're still a suburb of the city, but we're definitely a more suburban location. In March, like everybody, we were forced to close our theater down. And initially, we figured it would just be for a few months. So we were moving some shows into the summer, and then we moved them to fall, and then we moved them to next fall. So, like many people, our theater has been closed since March. And shortly after that, I talked to the staff at the Fine and Performing Arts Center, and we sort of brainstormed about how we could get out there and stay in front of all of you. So we decided to reach out to artists first, to artists who had been on our stage in the past few years, people whose shows had been very popular, or artists that had a large following, and asked them if they would be willing to come online and have a chat with me. And everyone said yes, and it's been an awesome experience. Along the way, I've periodically been introduced to artists who have not yet been on our stage, but who I hope will be on our stage at some point. So we're actually expanding out a little bit from people that you may have seen if you are one of our patrons into people that I think you need to know about and that you need to see and that hopefully will be on our stage. So tonight I'm thrilled to welcome one of those artists, somebody that I have not met in person, but I've met online, and we have mutual friends, and whose work I greatly admire. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to get his company up here to Illinois at some point in the next season and a half or 2 seasons. So let's welcome to the broadcast studio my new friend, Pioneer Winter. Hey.
Hey, Tommy, it's great to be here.
Hey. So how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm great. It's been a really full day. This is the last thing, on the schedule. So it's a nice way to round out the day. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for being here. Now, I'm calling in from my home in Berwyn, which is a suburb just west of Chicago. Where are you tonight?
I'm in Miami, Florida.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So warmer than we are right now.
But still just as rainy as it is there. So.
Yep. Yeah. So for all of you who are watching up here, know the thunderstorms just rolled through our area. So we're all like holding our breath. Please no electricity go off. So thank you for joining me tonight. And as I said in my intro, you're one of those artists that I've been interviewing who hasn't been on our stage yet. Now, have you performed in Chicago or in the Chicago region before ever?
No, I haven't. I've been to Chicago once for a total of 18 hours for a grad school scholarship interview. And that was, they flew us in, they flew us out, and I didn't really get to experience Chicago, but I would love to at some point.
Well, as I mentioned the first time we chatted on the phone, I have a great side gig as a restaurant critic. So when the pandemic is done and we can all be together in person again, come to Chicago and, I will show you where you should eat.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
So Pioneer Winter is an amazing choreographer who has a company called the Pioneer Winter Collective in Miami, for those of you who don't know his work. And I'm going to throw up onto the screen here this website. So this is the website. It's easy to remember because it's his name, pioneerwinter.com. So definitely, I'll throw this back up later in the broadcast, but definitely check that out if you haven't been there before. So one of the things that I have been telling everybody that I've been interviewing is I don't really prepare a lot of questions, but I always have one question that I ask everyone to kind of start the conversation rolling. Now, as a dancer and choreographer, obviously the creative arts are very important in your life. So where do you trace that from? Like when you were a little kid, what was the first moment that you got excited by performance? And then when was it that you said, this is what I want to do?
I think it was a long time before the latter happened. Like I really, I started dancing because of my mom. She would take these weekly adult tap classes in the evening. my dad and I would go and drop her off, and he would take me with him to a bar that was around the corner, and I would just watch him play pool for an hour, hour and a half while she was in her class, and then we would go and pick up my mom and go home. And I just, sometimes we would show up like a little bit before her class was over, and we would see them doing like that final combination, and it was exhilarating to watch, to hear the tap shoes, the rhythmic expression, and it was just. I asked my dad the next week if he could just go to the bar by himself and leave me, to watch my mom and her tap class. So that's how it really started. Was my mom doing tap as a hobby, and then I was like 3.5 when my parents let me start taking tap classes, and I started at the Edwin Holland School of Dance, which is in Opelika, North Miami area. And that was like my school all through high school. I mean, all through, from 3.5 to 18.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, taking dance for that long, did you eventually reach that point where you're like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do, or did it happen in college?
Yeah, I mean, I got more and more serious about it. I mean, like, you have to be serious when you're taking like 14 classes a week,
Yeah.
So like I like I undervalue like how I valued it then. Maybe just because it's so much more real to me now than it even was then. But then I was very exposed to it, dancing at least 2.5 hours a day, sometimes up to 8 hours a day, doing summer intensives, doing like the competition thing, and competing, and doing lyrical dance, and sort of like the competition circuit, but also like learning tap and learning ballet and learning modern dance. That modern dance came when I was like in high school.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got exposed to modern dance, it was Lester Horton technique,
Oh, yeah.
and it was Haitian folkloric dance. So that was like the focus in my high school experience. But again, I wasn't really thinking about dance as anything other than a passion, because I think I was still very much trained to think that the biggest change could be made by people that were like wealthy, or people that were had a lot of power, influence, and that an artist couldn't be that person. And so it wasn't until I was like 21 or 22 that I choreographed my first piece, and it had to do with reducing HIV stigma. And I realized then that like I had more voice at that moment with like the collaborators I was working with and the dancers than I would have working by myself in an office, no matter how much extra money you get or how much notoriety there is. There's nothing like the community that happens when you're building something with others. And I think that's like what made me realize, okay, like I can still have interests outside of dance, but I'm gonna make it like my mission that everything gets funneled through this dance lens. So I think of that as sort of like the language I use to speak about a lot of different passions.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I've always said that art, by its very nature, is subversive. Because of the way that art works when someone is experiencing it, it's visceral and it's emotional, and sometimes it's really subconscious. So and that translates for me into great power too. As an artist, I feel like we all enjoy just going and having a good time and watching something fun that makes us smile. And there's a great place for that. It's like the argument in my industry about tribute bands.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who think they're horrible. I think they're great if they're well done because it's just fun, But at the same time, I feel like there's a higher purpose for art that can really reach in, and if nothing else, open a tiny little crack in someone's consciousness to make them think about something differently.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And for, I guess, yeah, for a long time when I was younger, I thought that that's all dance what was cover bands. You know, that's what it was. It was rehashing the same Nutcracker. It was continuing to try to become the perfect Xerox of the generation before. You know,
Mhm.
that being an artist meant being able to perfectly replicate something. You know, it's, and so I always, you know, kind of question, well, like, where's room for me then? You
Mhm.
know, so I definitely think that the work I make and the work that I'm interested in is is that I wouldn't say that it's a higher, like, it's not like a higher form, um, or that whole like art being something other than entertainment. It's just what I think drives me to do it. So that's what's important for me, and I think that's what makes it exciting for me to do is looking at art that way.
Cool. Well, it's interesting because that leads me to something I definitely wanted to ask you, and you kind of led me to it earlier than I thought it was going to come in the interview. But when I was looking at your website and reading your artistic vision and your artistic statement, one of the things that jumped out at me was that you talk about the concept that your work um, focuses on three key intersections, and you mentioned agency, identity, and resilience. I would love to hear a little bit more about that because I found that to be a really profound and exciting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our work has to do with relational power and context. You know, I'm always like my have a sort of this self-awareness or this mindfulness practice to make sure that we are always I guess working from the ground up together, and that it isn't like scaffolded where the artists I work with are left out of communication until they're quote unquote needed. So that's where I see agency come in. I see that a lot of times it's said, oh, we're giving a voice to people, or we're uh, setting aside a seat at the table for. And I'm not really interested in in any of that. I'm interested in us, you know, why does there need to be a table in the first place? Like, is
Mhm.
there perhaps something better that we could be sitting around, you know? And and if there is, like, why not build it together? Because then we can be sure that we fit, because then what about the next person if it's so difficult to squeeze this person in, right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm not into perpetuating cycles that we've seen time and time again, in, you know, in really in everything, the way it's perpetuated. As far as identity goes, um, I I think it took me a lot of time to come to terms with my identity. Like, I wasn't out in high school, you know, I wasn't, I was still like very, uh, I guess, careful or uh, anxious about my identity, even into like, I would say like the maybe 21, 22. And I
Mhm.
know that that's still fairly young, but I think dance is what allowed me to be more fully myself.
Mhm.
Um, and resilience, I think that we kind of have this sort of resilience porn now, where someone that's tough and can, you know, take all these punches and still stands up and is still brave and still stands up for other people, you know, is resilient and something to be lauded and respected. And I think that that's really beautiful. But then also, like, I question the system that requires folks to have to be resilient, you know, that that would ask someone to stand up after they've been hit, you know,
Mhm.
um, or been knocked down, where there's that expectation of just like blatant, attempting and trying, and that hope, hope of something better the next day.
Yeah.
So those three things really have a through line in all the work we do, because I think these are very specific to the queer community, but can also be shared amongst everyone, because everybody has felt what it. I guess everybody has felt what it means to have agency or to not have agency.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know so much about identity. Maybe folks that don't have to contemplate their identity are blessed. That's a privilege in and of itself to just fit into a world that was made for you. So yeah, but
Yep. No, thank you. I mean, I think that kind of explains a little bit more even than what you had on your website. And it's funny because the whole concept of that place at the table thing, it for me, it ties into the concept of something that I remember from, I came out first to all of my friends, but I didn't come out to my family until 12 years later. So I was out but not out.
Mhm.
And so I was struggling with that identity of trying to be one person in this situation and a different person over here and diverting conversations. And it's exhausting when you're questioning, is my identity, am I okay?
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with me?
Mhm.
And I remember, when I finally got around to the point of saying, you know what, I'm just fine and I'm just going to be who I am, is the word that just set me off was the word tolerance. Drives me crazy because what it indicates is that there's something bad that you're just putting up with because you're such a great person that you can handle it. And
Right.
I'm like, really? Don't go there. So that's my version of the getting rid of the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was something I read a few days ago that reminds me of that. The idea of we were hearing a lot of diversity and inclusion talk now,
Yeah.
more than ever, but because of that, like the system is also flooded with like I think a lot of misinformation, and diversity and inclusion being thrown around too much. And someone said diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. Um, and and then someone was like, well, what about diversity is being asked to dance, inclusion is getting to pick the song? And then someone else was like, well, what about inclusion is being on the planning committee? And like, but either way, inclusion needs to be baked into the cake in the beginning. It's not something that you sprinkle on the top at the end, And so I keep my eye on that because performative allyship is not like something that I am interested in. I feel like that idea of tolerance is definitely performative allyship. It's someone that wants to feel like a savior for doing the right thing, and you could even say that to feel like you're tolerating something is in itself prejudice against that thing, So it's yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, I heard from somebody who was a pretty prominent advocate in the Black Lives Matter movement that she said, essentially, I'm done with being the person that you call when you're in a crisis and you don't know how to deal with um, with inclusion or equity. Fix it, and then I'll talk to you. But it's not my job to fix it for you. And I think a lot of people are just tired. Like people just do it.
Absolutely.
So one of the things you brought up was really interesting, is it ties a lot into the work that I've watched a lot of your videos, is that idea of reaching out and bringing people into the dance fold who may have felt like they can't dance, or that they're not a dancer, or that dance is not something that applies to them. It's really expanding that definition of that anyone can dance and express themselves through movement.
Yes.
So I would love to hear a little bit. I would love to play the Gimp Gate clip to start with.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about the work, and then we'll play the clip, and then we can talk about it again afterwards.
Sure. So Gimpgate was choreographed in 2016. It's actually a really I love telling the story because it reminds me that sometimes all you have to do is just put it out in the universe, and someone's listening, So I went to the 25th anniversary of the ADA, and they had like a convention or a plenary at the Adrian Arsh Center, and as a grantee, we were we were asked to attend, and so I was there, and I heard a dancer, a founding member of a dance company in Miami named Karen Peterson and Dancers, and this founding member's name was Marjorie Lane Burnett, and she was talking about how she's been dancing with Karen for like 25 years.
Wow.
Karen Peterson just actually celebrated their 30th anniversary this past week through a virtual gala. But Marjorie actually started dancing with Karen like in 1990, 1991. And she was talking about how she would really love to work with other choreographers, but so far Miami's only choreographer that's like working with dancers who might be living with disability is Karen. And I'd been really interested in approaching Karen and asking her if I could work with her company because I really wanted to. I've never been. I've never been not curious, and I've never not wanted to see things more and more outside of myself. So the opportunity to be able to work with someone like Marjorie, I was really excited about, but I was also like, didn't know how to even ask. Of course, I had my reservations because I didn't want to do the wrong thing. What happens if we get into a rehearsal and I'm offensive? Like what happens if I hurt Marjorie? And if I'm not careful enough, or if I say the wrong thing. Just basic, like, silly, what if I'm stupid? And
I get it.
yeah, and then Adriana Perez from Miami-Dade Cultural Affairs contacted me, and we were just catching up, and she does a lot of really great work for the dance community in Miami. All Miami-Dade Cultural Affairs does, and she's a really great administrator and dance community leader. And so she sort of passed on my message that to Karen that I was interested in working with her. And it turns out that Karen was like equally interested in me working. So like she
Yeah.
commissioned me to make a duet. And it's just, it's funny, like we have ideas that float around, but sometimes if we don't verbalize them, we can't, put it out there. So it's just one of those times where, I was just asked, So Gimpgate, is the name of the piece. It was 13 to 15 minutes long, depending on how slow or fast we were going in the live version. But in the short film version, it's 5 minutes, I believe, 5 minutes 6 seconds. So the screen dance version is a little bit different than the live version. I'm not sure which version you'll be playing. Probably the live version.
I think it is. It's the one that's in the reprise video.
Yeah,
You're saying?
it's all frontal. Yeah. So we also reshot it a few months later as a screen dance where like some of the more challenging transitions were sort of smoothed out, where we were able to change the perspective of the viewer and have a little bit more control over that. So it kind of became like a new piece. But really what it remained from start to finish was looking at performing your own power, looking at basically seizing your own agency, and how can I, as a quote unquote able-bodied dancer, support and act as surrogate as best I can for the agency and the will of a dancer that needs some support. Because that's
Wonderful.
really what it comes down to, is just that there's will and there's willpower, but then sometimes there's still, challenges. We don't always uh, sometimes we know the direction we want to go, but we need some assistance getting there, And so with Marjorie, it was very important that she initiate the movement, that the movement that we do is based upon a movement vocabulary that we create together. It's not something that I'm saying, okay, we're going to do this 5, 6, 7, 8. Can you copy me? It wasn't about mimicking. It was about creating our own language that we could somehow codify and turn into phrasing and sentences within the work. And we just were very open throughout the entire process. I think that's how she ended up not using the wheelchair at all, was, we just trusted each other a lot, and neither of us wanted to do something that we'd seen done before, which was an overuse of the wheelchair, treating the wheelchair sometimes even better than the person in it. One of my pet peeves is seeing a dancer that is dancing with someone in a wheelchair and they sort of interact more with the chair than with the person in the chair. And I was just so worried that I would make that same error, especially with it being my first time, that we just took the chair out of the equation, and it turned out, great. We took a risk, and it's one of my greatest memories was working with Marjorie. So yeah.
So I'm going to do my best to do a share screen here. So it's on Vimeo, and Vimeo is challenging to me, but I'm going to try to make it happen. Here we go. Oh, and I'm going to have to be vain and put on my glasses. Forget about being vain. Here we go. There we are.
Fuck you. Mind your own fucking business. Put your purpose out.
Reach more. Hand out.
Lean back.
Show your face. Does this hurt? Hold on tight.
Keep up with me.
Are you okay?
Lean back.
Sorry.
Grab my hand. Grab them.
Breathe with me.
Wait. hand. Grab my hand. My leg is stuck.
Hold on tight.
Um,
Show your face.
Turn this back on here. Wow. I need to go look for the entire the 15-minute version. I need to see a copy of that.
Yeah, no, we had the mirror set up differently so that as you're it was on a proscenium, so that if you're watching the live version, you as the audience member would see Marjorie emerge walking forward, but you would also see two more of her, so you see three Marjorie walking towards you.
Wow.
And that's sort of like the first image you see. And we so this was like the screen dance version. We filmed it at the Adrienne R Center for the Performing Arts in an afternoon with just using the mirrors that they had there. So it was a really fun performance. It's something that like I've always wanted to expand and turn into like an evening length piece, but we've how projects sometimes sit in your head for years before you get the opportunity to be able to do them. So yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing work, and I think you're right. Look, and knowing the backstory of the conversation about the wheelchair, I think you're right. It's so much more powerful without that as a major component of the dance.
Yeah, yeah. You get to see the person first rather than an apparatus, and everybody has a different relationship with their mobility and with the apparatus they use. Everybody is different, and Marjorie herself wanted to be seen outside of the wheelchair, and it's a power wheelchair. It's like a 400 something pound, machine. So it's and Marjorie is so small. She's like, I mean, anybody would feel small in that thing. I've had it run over my foot a few times, and it definitely doesn't feel small then. It's so
No.
so I think that it's also it was very liberating for us just to be like flesh to flesh, body to body, without having this sort of without the chair being like this interloper, that I could take on the responsibilities that had been prescribed to the chair, and I was okay with that, and okay with that it was a solo for two, and it really was Marjorie's solo.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely looking forward to seeing the longer version of it, because now that I've seen it, and I would love to see it in person if it's ever remounted in a place where I am.
Oh yeah, no, we would love to perform it again.
Cool. So I'm gonna switch gears for a second, because there was something else in your bio that stood out to me that I thought was really fascinating. Well, everything was, but the fact that you have a master's degree in choreography, and you're a choreographer and a dancer, but you also have an MPH in public health and epidemiology. And I find the combination of those two things to be absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious. I love science. I told you before, I didn't really think that there was anything for me in dance when I was in high school. So I concentrated on of course I was dancing, but I was also doing a lot of dance placement and dual enrollment classes. So by the time I graduated high school, I was a junior in college as far as credit wise. And so I was able to graduate with my undergrad very quickly. And it was kind of like, okay, now what? What are you going to do? Are you going to like go get a PhD? Are you going to go become a lawyer? Are you going to become, and I think I just, I wasn't, I think I was having second thoughts about what I wanted to commit myself to. And the master's in public health was like, okay, like I can, you know, I can apply myself and get this done in a year and a half, and set myself apart. And I could also, you know, learn some valuable skills along the way. Like I attribute my like my grant writing ability, and just like the being able to do the administrative stuff that an artist has to often do themselves. I found that like that degree prepared me for that, just because like I mean any grad school is going to prepare you for that sort of stress, you know.
Yes.
And then I got the so and I started working for Alert Health, which was like a Hep C, HIV, and STD clinic, and they were actually the first fiscal sponsor for me wanting to do Reaching the Surface, which was the piece I made in 2010 to in hopes of destigmatizing HIV in North Miami. So they were the fiscal agent for that, and that was my first grant. I think we got like $6,000 or something, and we did like 2 nights of performance, 2 different venues. You know, everybody got paid, but like, you know, very little.
Yeah.
And there were like 10 or 11 of us. We had a guitarist, spoken word artist. It was like 9 or 10 dancers. It was kind of crazy. It was it was an odd group of us, and of course, it was like my first time ever choreographing an opportunity through, you know, working at this public health nonprofit that was willing to take a chance on, you know, me writing a grant in their name and doing a performance. You know,
Yep. It all kind of works together in mysterious ways, doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
That's funny because I, you know, I have 2 undergraduate degrees, and one is in music and the other is in radio, television production, and then a master's degree in theater. So it in a way, it's all related to the creative arts, but it's, you know, the radio TV production piece was so scientific and so technical, and because I was behind the camera, you know, not in front of the camera for that. So I kind of get that. And I think sometimes it's just where, you know, where we get an opportunity will suddenly shift our entire focus. My grad school, I was, I did an internship, but it happened to be at a theater that specialized in Shakespeare. And I mean, I always liked Shakespeare before that, but I had never dived into it. And suddenly I discovered a passion that I didn't know I had. But my other job at that during that grad school, when I was in that internship, was I was half the time I worked with the dramaturg, but the other half of the time I was the assistant to the accessibility coordinator for the theater. And I ended up, I was originally going to write my master's thesis on Shakespeare, and instead I wrote my master's thesis on programmatic accessibility in the performing arts, because the ADA had just been passed about 4 or 5 years before that. So my focus was on accessibility and programmatic, not necessarily physical, but you know, things like sign shadowing and sign interpretation and audio description and audio enhancement and all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah, no, you were one of the first to be looking into that. I mean, like now we see it's much more common. You know, it's but it's only been what 30 years since
yeah, it was 1989.
Yeah.
Was when it was signed, and this was in 1992 that I was doing my internship. And the thing that I learned to do that back then was really difficult because technology wasn't as easy as it is now, is that they made, I don't know how they did this to me. They put me in charge of typing the audio description scripts so for the audio describers who would sit in the booth and watch the performance and describe what was going on. But the art of writing an audio described script, oh my God, it's like the hardest thing ever, because you're trying to insert things where there's not dialogue happening, so they're not speaking over, and you can't use qualitative language. You can't say she's wearing a beautiful dress. You can say she's wearing a floor-length red dress that's falling off of one of her shoulders, but you can't say anything of it was just so hard.
Wow. So like you're crafting this narrative without leading the audience to to make any decisions based upon, like, it's almost like leading questions. And eyewitness memory is like that too. I did like a little bit of that in undergrad, and it was just so funny how you can really change an entire narrative based upon just like a few choice words. And that's really cool.
Yeah, and you don't realize how much you do it until you start realizing that you can't do it. And actually, the technical piece of it that was the hardest was trying to figure out how to get the spoken description to happen so that it didn't interfere with the dialogue. And Shakespeare is talky, so it was really interesting. I think the first script that I wrote was for Much Ado About Nothing. It was rough, but you know what? You learn a lot when you're thrown into the fire and you have no choice.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, when we were first connected and we first talked, we were talking about the concept of queer identity and how that plays out in our art or in our, in our lives. But how do you feel like that has informed your work and continues to inform your work?
Yeah, well, I mean, everything I make is autobiographic. And when I say autobiographic, I don't mean that it's just my biography. It's autobiographic in that everybody in the work has some ownership, that everybody in the work should be able to see themselves in it. It's not just about like my vision. But I do admit that like we don't, the work we make, I find applies to myself every time, whether it's a work about love and relationships, or it's about fear, or it's about coming out, or it's about bad breakup stories, or it's about body dysmorphia, or like not feeling comfortable in your own skin, or hookup culture. It's like everything has been something that I've like experienced, firsthand, like, death of a parent, and like exploring grief and loss and faith. I grew up Jehovah's Witness. So, like practicing that faith, they would have never accepted a queer person. Just like the repression that is so common across the queer community, and the catharsis that comes from being able to share memories like that with other queer people and with audiences that might not have the exact same memory or the same experience, but they're able to place themselves somewhere there. And and it's there that we're truly understanding our interdependence, and our the crosshairs that we always sort of imagine ourselves being under, like, the oppression, really changing the narrative that those are not crosshairs. That's our intersection. That's, that's the way that we are relating to one another. That's a mutual allyship, and finding bravery in that. So I think, we've all been through like those decisions and those times in our life that we think, yeah, that like really made me who the person I am. That grief, that loss, that that violence, that whatever it is that you can sort of attribute to being the way you are finds its way into the dances that that I make with the members of the collective, and along the way they're asked to do the same. So it's really it's really about like being able to weave these I don't know, these new myths for ourselves, you know, being able to change, to flip the script so that we're not telling the story as a victim, we're telling the story as the victor.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful way to think of it, because I think so many of us, I came out in the early 80s, so right at the beginning of the AIDS crisis. And so, my formative years were during the beginning of that whole denial on the federal level that this was an issue and that it was a gay disease, and and that hearing that we deserved what we got because we were sinners and the whole thing, and that's hard, when that's the narrative that you carry and you believe it. It's tough, and you finally have to reach a point where you go, wait, that's not my narrative, that's somebody else's idea of me, and that's not who I am.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like, what I love about your work is I feel like what you do is you give people in your collective and the other dancers that you work with, you give them the opportunity to express this unique vision of who they know they are, who they really are, in a very visceral, unedited kind of way that it's rare. Most people don't have the chance to get out there and just say, here I am.
Yeah.
Take me as I am.
Yeah, and I don't really even see it as like me giving anyone an opportunity. I feel like this is the smart thing to be doing, like this is I don't know. I can't imagine being interested by an artist that wouldn't take that on, that I mean, I don't know if I wanted this, if I wanted one person's opinion, I would just talk to myself, right?
Yeah.
So when I don't know, and all of art is collaborative,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think there are many artists that can say that they do everything 100%. Like, whether it's advising or the workshops that it takes to make the work, to generate the work, or the community discussions, the panels, the books you read, the people you're inspired by, the interviews you have, like there's so many people that any single artist can thank for their work, and it's not to take anything away from the artist. It's just to I think really highlight the significance and the value of collaboration.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with you. And at the same time, I think you do need to give yourself a little pat on the back occasionally for having the vision to create the space for that conversation to happen, because you and I both know there are plenty of artists out there and artistic ensembles that do lovely work, but don't have that vision. They have a different vision, and it's not necessarily a wrong vision, but I feel like sometimes you just need to say, you know what? Yes, I am damn good at what I do, and I just need to recognize that.
Thank you.
So, one of the things I wanted to talk about, because we've got about 10 more minutes, is we were talking before the interview started tonight about a project called Open Space.
Yes.
So please tell me about that, because it sounds like a really wonderful project.
Sure. So Open Space is a program that it's a partnership between the International Association of Blacks in Dance, Francine Sheffield, or Sheffield Global Arts Management, and KMP, Christopher McDowell Artists. And so Open Space is episodic, and it is meant to uplift, highlight, and engage artists of African ancestry or origin. But it's also about centering Black artists and allies at all stages of their careers. So I'm going to be having an opportunity to guest host with special guests Ming Tong Guan from Ping Pong Productions, Omar Ingram from IABD, Laura Martinez from World Fusion Events, and Shoshana Polanco from La Teateria. So that'll be 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. We'll be talking about inclusivity, especially when centering community and collaboration. So a lot of what we've talked about tonight, and really looking at what are some practices for protecting artists, for staying away from tokenism, from how do you mentioned at the beginning of this segment tonight how you've been getting to know artists that were not on your radar at first. So like the importance of that, and the importance of presenters being open to new artists and not just sticking with the same artists because, it's an easy, check off, or they're already in the circuit. And how do you pull up emerging artists who are ready and support them in a way that, values and treats their work with integrity. So it's going to be a great conversation. Yeah.
And so what day is it?
So that is Wednesday, October 21st, tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, so 4:30 Central for all of you who are patrons of the Fine and Performing Arts Center. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll see iabdassociation.org. So if you go to that website, iabdassociation.org, you can drill in and find the information on open space. Or if you're looking at this right now, if you have the ability to write this down or paste it out, it's /page/open space, but it's right here and this is archived. So, tomorrow you can always go to YouTube, pull this up again and fast forward through our interview and catch this. And IABD is the International Association of Blacks in Dance, correct?
Yes.
And then you mentioned that part of the reason that you were connected through Francine and Christopher was that you were hoping to do something through open space that was queer focused, correct?
Yeah, so right now, the Artist Connectivity Series has Open Space, it has Latinx, and it also has PRC and USA. So it's artists from the People's Republic of China in the United States, and that's hosted in a partnership between Ping Pong and KMP artists. And then there's the Latinx Connectivity Series that is a collaboration between Shoshana Polanco, Christopher McDowell, and World Fusion and Juan Pablo Siles. So the idea is that they are going to be starting new open space or open space-esque episodes. So ours would be the Queer Artist Connectivity Series.
Awesome.
So yeah, we're starting to go in that direction.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about that, and I love Ping Pong. The work is amazing. So yeah. And if if any of you who are watching this want more information about any of this, just email me and I will connect you with all the information that you need, because I know there's a lot of words going around here tonight. But definitely put Pioneer's website back up again, pioneerwinter.com. I wanted to ask you quickly, because we just have a few more minutes, about you've been choreographing for 10 years or more now, but you started this Pioneer Winter Collective 4 years ago. So talk to me about what is the Pioneer Winter Collective? What is that group?
So it takes a while to develop rapport. It takes a while to develop a strong enough relationship where you can trust and discuss and I think get deeper in like the work that you're making. So I prefer artists that I know like have that mindset, who are willing to do that deep dive, that aren't just there to memorize some steps and get a paycheck. Artists don't get paid enough for it to be just that,
No.
like getting something more out of this. And so I'm interested in artists that want to share in community building. with Pioneer Winter Collective establishing itself as its own nonprofit in October of 2016, I was sort of making this statement that I was going to develop rapport and relationships with a group of core artists and give them as much opportunity and work and find as many chances for us to be able to create together as possible. So that started at 6, and now there are 11 of us.
Wow.
And of course, it's still like a project-based company. Like, you know, I wish one day to be able to pay for you know, someone's healthcare and have a 40-something, you know, week season. But you know, I also am completely okay with where we are right now because this is sustainable, and you know, we're able to pivot really well because of COVID. You know, we're working on Birds of Paradise, and that is there are 11 of us collaborating on that work, 8 performers, 8 dancers, 1 costume designer, Chaplain Tyler, and then composer Yurai Koj. And then the dancers are Nurka Marquez, Hector Machado, Barbara Muehlner, Katrina Petraka, Frank Camposano, Torian DeVoe, and Lizalota Pitlow and Justice Rodriguez. So it's like it's it's not just me by myself, yeah, that's what that short video was that I sent. Didn't have any sound. That was preparation for what we're working on for Birds of Paradise. So that's like the big thing that we're gonna hopefully be restarting rehearsals to do in November. You know, if everything goes as planned, and starting to tiptoe back into the rehearsal process.
And that video is only, what, a minute long, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let me go ahead and just show that video really quickly. There's no music, everybody, but it gives you a sense of the movement. So let's go ahead and share that. Hold on just a second. Oops, there we go.
So that's Hector and Lota that were just dancing together. So they're part of the core group. And this was just an opportunity for other Miami artists to come and just see what we're up to, and an opportunity to meet new people. And on that day, I was able to hire 3 new company dancers.
Oh my gosh. So is this improvisational work or is it choreographed work?
So what they are doing right now, it's a mix. The audition had some choreographed work. It also had some improvisation. We definitely do a lot of structured improvisation,
Okay.
a lot of task-based work, a lot of games and imperatives, and using text, using different situations, imagined situations in order to elicit movement.
Okay.
But what you're seeing is a mix of about a 3-hour workshop that included that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So ultimately, when the dance is done, is it the 11 core people, or are you gonna have more people involved?
Yeah. But we are looking for other queer voices to add to the work, mostly as inspiration for discussion. So we're encouraging folks to share their stories. They can just send their story of agency, identity, and resilience that we talked about earlier to stories@pioneerwinter.com. And it'll
so the whole concept of the dance is about queer identity, then, the Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, queer identity, and how we queer identity is more than just a single action, but it's all these little things that lead up to that brave act. You know, and sort of looking at the queer person as a mythic hero in some way. You know, in the same way that I think in mainstream mythology we hear about like the phoenix rising from the ashes. Well,
Yeah.
I think of the Bird of Paradise as the queer phoenix. So that's how we're approaching it.
I like that. I feel like I've been that bird of paradise about 12 times in my life. So
Yeah, and you'll have 12 more, no doubt. So,
at
but
least.
the importance is like turning the falling into flight, and that's what we're about.
Yep. I think, and you're right. You're talking about, it's kind of awful that you have to be resilient, but at least you can be when you have to be, so.
Yeah.
So we're just about out of time. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you wanted to bring up before we end tonight?
No. I just I'm really happy to meet you, Tommy. I'm glad that we were connected. Thanks again to Christopher for that. And I hope this is the beginning of just the start of our relationship. I love that there might be the possibility of us going to perform out in Illinois, and let's just keep in contact. And also, if anybody has like any questions or wants to follow up with me, I'm more than happy to continue dialogue with anyone that's interested. They can just hit me up on the website, and sending an email through there will go directly to me.
Awesome. So that everybody will see at the bottom of the screen, pioneerwinter.com. That's a no-brainer. It's easy to remember that website. It's not 7,000 miles long. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me tonight. And I'm going to take you out of the stream in just a minute, so I can do a little spiel at the end. But please don't leave. Once we go off the air, we can chat for a little bit more. So I hope everybody enjoyed our wonderful conversation tonight. And thank you, Pioneer, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So everybody, thank you so much for joining tonight. Just a couple of quick notes. We're going to be taking the next 2 weeks off from this weekly interview show. Next week, because I'm going to be out of town, and the following week, because it's election day, and nobody is going to want to watch this show on election night, much less me, because I'm a poll worker this year. So at this point in time, I will still be at the polls dealing with voters. So we're going to take 2 weeks off, which means I'll see you again in 3 weeks on November the 10th. And I'm excited that I just talked to my good friend, Melissa Thodos from Thodos Dance Chicago. And Melissa will be our November 10th guest. So taking a little break. We'll see you back on November 10th. And between now and then, I hope everybody stays happy, stays healthy. And remember, if you haven't already done it, get out and vote in this election. And of course, you know who I want you to vote for, but I'm not going to say that. So I want to keep my job. But read my mind. All right. So thank you, everybody. And I'll see you in 3 weeks. And let me find our outro video. Here we go. So thanks, everybody.